Hello and welcome to Terrainmancers. I'm your host, Jonathan Myers, and here I am with the Deepcuts Pathfinder Dragon. It's supposed to be a silver dragon. It's got some great detailing on it. I'm going to use it as a wyvern for my Dungeons and Dragons games, and also for Frostgrave, another great game I like to play from Osprey. You can see it's just really well put together. It's been primed with Vallejo primer, which is some really great primer. Takes the paint quite well. And what I'm going to do now is went ahead and I put some GW skulls on there. You can get that in their box of bones. So just give Games Workshop a call. You can order some up or go online to their website. But this is a great model. I'm really impressed with the sculpting job on this. I was a little skeptical at first, but they've really proven to put out some great models. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put up the paints that I used in this tutorial. Go ahead and pause this video right here and you can write those down and you know what I'm using. So I'm going to start with covering the model, and I'm using Nightshade Purple from Reaper Miniatures. You can get this paint from Reaper.com. Probably be the most direct way to do it, or any one of your hobby retailers. They carry the line. I find it works great and covers the model great with this primer. I'm just going ahead and you don't have to be real neat about it. I'm just going ahead and covering this whole model with purple. This purple gives you a deeper shadow than say black. Black tends to flatten things out, and I like a more naturalistic look. So I'm going to go with the Nightshade Purple, and I'm going to make sure I cover all the nooks and crannies on this. Now you can see I've done a pretty good job at doing that. And now that it's all covered, I got all the little spots, there's no white showing. I want to go ahead and begin to apply what I call the base coat. Base coat is your basic coat that you just want to cover the model with, so it's got a strong undercoating of all the different tones that you want. First, I'm just going to cover the whole model here now with a violet red, again from Reaper. And I'm just going to apply it over the surface of the model, allowing a little bit of that the shadow of that purple to come through and just deepen the color down a little bit, make it a little more naturalistic. And I'm going to cover in all the areas here. Once I've gotten this done, I'll probably go over it with a lighter tone of, I'm thinking True Red from Reaper, and that should look really good. Well, here we are now with that violet red on there, and actually instead of True Red, I'm going to use what Reaper calls Blood Red. So in case you're looking to paint your dragon similar to the way I'm doing it with this wyvernish look, you can see where there's these really nice details that are popping out, like the scales along the tail and the back. And this red's really going to help some of that just pop off of there a little bit, off of the violet red. So I'm going to go ahead and first do some of the interior of the wings and pick up on some of those spines and protrusions that are on this wyvern's body. And I'm just going to, take my time getting it in there. I'm not going to be terribly neat about it, but I do want to help some of those colors to pull out. You want to be like more, specific about where you want to apply it, but it doesn't require a lot of precision at this point. The precision will come in the later stages. So I'm just going to apply this blood red over the surface, and with the help of a hairdryer, voila, it's dried up. So let's make a little bit of those colors pop. Now at this point, it's very subtle blend here, but now I want to bring out more of the details. So now I'm going to want to go in here and I'm going to want to paint a secondary color in here that I want to be desert tan to bring out the underside of the wings and the belly to give it more of a contrast. And then I also want to bring out all the highlights of the different scales along its spine and tail and head. And I'm probably going to do that with a lava orange. I think that would probably be the best decision at this point. So I'm going to go in here, and first I'm going to go in and dry brush on my highlights with that lava orange. Now when you dry brush, you just get a flat brush. Sometimes you can trim it down, and you just want to load it with paint, brush most of it off, if not almost all of it. And then whatever's still stuck in the bristles, you just want to press along the surface of the model. It'll grab the raised edges, and it'll just put a highlight on those highest features on your model. It's a really great technique that a lot of miniature painters are already savvy to. But if you're not, it's a great model to practice on. And even if you mess it up, it's not a big deal. I'd say just go ahead and put another coat of blood red on there and then try dry brushing again. It's not going to damage the model. It's just going to set you back a little bit with time. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go in with just a little touch of, I'm thinking some yellow, just to grab just the slightest bit of detail on some of the highest edges now. If I went with all the raised edges with that other tone for the mid-tone, now I just want to get the highest areas to start to bring in a highlight a little bit. So I'm just going to do, again, with that yellow, just little areas here and there, just to get some of that speckling along the scales like you see as if it were in the light that it might pick up along its back. So I'm going to go along and, again, follow through with some more dry brushing just to make sure I'm getting nice mid-tones and even touching base a little bit on some of the highlighting, and to get a real nice effect here. So now I'm going to go underneath with that desert tan, and I'm going to go underneath the wings. Then I'm also going to go underneath of the wyvern itself on its belly, and this will be really nice. I'll also do the bottom side of the tail, and this is how I'll get my lighter areas in there. And again, it will build just a nice contrast between the reds of the backside of this creature and then the more exposed belly that will be climbing through the dirt, ash, soot of its lair. So I'm going to just stroke this right into that grooves of the wing and give it a nice coating. And then once I've done that, I'll use a hairdryer to speed up the process. So you can see I've done it along its neck, its belly, and the underside of its wings. And I'm pleased with the results. So now we're going to apply some ink washes. So I'm taking some brown acrylic ink from Doc Martens, which you can get at your local hobby store. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this wash right over top of what I've just done with the tan. The reason I'm going to do this is I want to tone it down quite a bit. I use this as the base coat, so now I want to put the wash in to get into the cracks. And if you put it on too heavy, don't sweat it. You can always water it down, wash it off, wipe it off with a paper towel, and just go back into it. But right now I'm just putting on the wash. And I did put it in a little heavy, so you're going to see I'm going to grab some of it from there rather than going back over to my well. And I'm just going to apply the ink to the other side to get it into the grooves and the cracks on the underside of the wing. And what this will do is it'll just make some of those shadows, just help the highlights pop out better. It'll get into the nooks and crannies, make it a little more naturalistic. And that's really the style I like to paint in anyway. I'm more of a naturalist. You can go with more clean looks or cartoon looks, but I prefer the naturalistic look over everything. I really want creatures that look like they can just hop right off the base. So now you're seeing I'm dry brushing over top of that wash, and that's really what the naturalistic style is all about. It's just about putting in your washes and putting in some highlights and deepening down those tones again, then going back in, dry brushing again. You go back and forth till you get that aesthetic look your eye is pleased with. And this is really subject to you and what you prefer when you see something. And you'll know as you give it time, you'll learn it. So now I'm going to go in and do some detailing. So I'm going to paint some leather brown along the horns, also along the little bony protrusions on the cheek. Then I'm also going to highlight the platelets under the belly and even some of the spines up in the wings and on the claws and such. Now this is the time when you gotta start taking your time. It's not a race. Painting, if anything, if it were a race, it would have to be a marathon, definitely not a sprint. So just take your time, and over time you'll get speed. But what you want to do right now is just breathe, listen to some music, just enjoy what you're doing, maybe watch a nice TV program, but pay attention to the model, and go ahead and just add those highlights right along like I'm doing here on this platelet, and take your time. See, I'm just a little dab in there. I'm not covering the whole thing. I'm just trying to bring out some of the highlights, still allowing that violet and purple to work, and even the base coat to shine through, and just letting a little bit of this leather brown help this model just pop a little. Just where the light's hitting, it's picking up a little bit on those platelets. And this is just the time when you just practice your painting skills. You take your time, and it'll come together for you. Okay, so now that that's all done, and I've done the highlighting, we see that everything's working out really well. The problem is some areas are way brighter than other areas. So what we want to try to do is pull it all together with a nice watered out black wash. So take your black ink, water it way out, and I do mean water it way out, because you can always go back over it with more. And then I wash it all over and just let that soup kind of go down in between the cracks. And I want to cover this entire miniature just to bring all the tones down to a more even, balanced tone. And that's what we're looking for, is a natural balance. It'll go down into the cracks. It'll bring down the brighter highlights just enough so that everything will just come down to a more moderate tone, and it'll be much more pleasing on the eyes. Now once that's dry, you can see now it's got a much more naturalistic look, and pleased with that, I'm going to move on to the rock next. So I'm using some earth brown to do the rock. And what I'm going to do with this earth brown is I'm going to cover the entire feature with it, and then I'm going to go back over top of it, dry brushing in some leather brown again, just to bring out some of the highlights in the raised areas. And again, you don't have to be real neat about it. Probably be a little more careful when you get to the dry brushing part. It is, at the end of the day, a rock, so you want to go in there and detail. In my case, I'm detailing some skulls, which won't necessarily be on your model, so I'm going to take a little time to do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring in the highlights, highlight everything just to make some of those edges pop a little better, and they'll stand out a little better on camera and also on the gaming table. They usually tell you, that contrast is a great thing for the gaming table. So just go ahead, again with the dry brush, make sure you have most of the paint off, have a good time, apply that over the surface to the point where you feel that it pops in the fashion that you want it to. Now I'm going to paint lava on the base. So what I'm going to start with is a nice lava orange from Reaper. And I'm going to paint that all over the surface here. Then on top of it, you're going to see I'm going to apply hazard yellow on top of it. And the merger of the two colors should give me a nice warm lava-like tone that I want to work with. So here I am with the hazard yellow, just applying that in certain areas. Probably you want to apply more yellow to the center of the model and work your way out to the edges. So it's not a bad idea, but again, you just let it wash into areas and get that nice lava effect. And once I've got this done, I want to go on to more of an effects level now with this model. I want to go ahead and start adding, you'll see, I want to add, like molten lava on the surface. And how I'm going to do this is where I have the lava pouring out of the rocks and those details and helps like that. That just adds that extra effect. But how I'm going to do the molten lava now is I'm going to set the wyvern down and just add a little bit of speckling, almost like a leopard spotting effect. So I'll add the little spots here and there, and you'll want some that are larger, some that are smaller, and they're floating on the surface as if there's this river of molten lava that's pouring through there to kind of create a hellscape for this wyvern to live in. And he's waiting for adventurers to come in, obviously steeped on the skulls of his past victims, and he's walking around and just being all intimidating. So when you put this on the board, you want that to have that feel when you're wargaming, or if you're even role playing, that the opponent or your fellow players are just like, whoa, that thing's intimidating. And that's really the goal. I often encourage people to look up the bestiary, read about these creatures in your mythologies and your folklores, and bring those elements to the animal and bring them to life. I always liked that the wyvern had that poisonous tail. So as I'm putting all these molten effects in there, all this stuff's going through my head, just trying to give me an idea of what I can do to make this creature really stand out on the table and such. So now that the lava's all on there, I'm going to go into what I call applying pastels. Again, this is just some more effects work. I'm going to go ahead and take some of this brown, and you can get these chalks at your local hobby store. They should be readily available. And I'm just going to rub those all into the cracks and on the edges, because this thing's climbing around in the dirt and the soot and in the ash of its victims all day long. So I want to put that along the belly of the creature, along the underside of its wings, up in the nooks and crannies under its neck, where it would be getting dirt inside its claws. So just go ahead and brush that in. And the nice thing with pastels is they blend really nice. They're not really a difficult medium to work with. It just take your time. You just brush it on as you need it, and you can always dust off or blow off what you don't want on there. Now, once you get this all put on here, you want to make sure you seal it with a nice acrylic matte sealing spray. I use the Testors brand. I use the matte tester spray because it is one of the truest matte sealers you can put on your models. It doesn't give you that kind of pulling and make areas glossy if you're not looking for that. And in this case, I would only be looking for that in the back side, but I'll get to that in a second. So I'm just going in under all the platelets. I'm going to go under the tail, even on top of those skulls, and just add some of this dirt. It's been falling down from the tops of the cave, and then also, on the base of its lair, on the grounds when it's climbing and crawling across the ground. I'm very much inspired by the Vermithrax pejorative dragon that you saw in the old 1980s film Dragon Slayer. Absolutely love that model. I think Phil Tippett created one of the best dragons on film ever, and it's very much always inspired my imagination. So in this case, I'm just bringing these effects in, and I'm also calling into my illustration background. And just like if I were doing a painting of a dragon, I'm trying to bring the same details from the 2D ideas into the 3D realm. I want this thing to look like it could just jump off that rock and fly right across the room at you. So that's really my goal when I'm painting, is to try to make it as realistic as humanly possible. So now I'm going ahead and I'm painting all that black in there. So I use the black chalk, and that's creating all the soot. I figure all the soot of its victims are getting all underneath the wings and on its belly. But when it flies in the air, it might blow out to the lower third of the wings. So I'm only going to cover about that last third of the wings, like it's been blowing off, but it's not quite off. It's almost like its victims are always carried upon it. It can't quite get clean of what it eats. And I just think it brings a more menacing element to my creature. The darker the creature, the more true the hero will shine when it has to fight these things. So I really like that kind of heroic versus villain aspect of these things. So monsters are fun. I enjoy it. And dragons, I think, are cool looking creatures. I've always enjoyed them. They've always been the big heavy for me. Not to say there's not good dragons, those are great too, but I enjoy painting the bad guy. Okay, so now I'm going in with the final effect. After spraying this and sealing it, make sure you do that first. I'm going to add the effect of making the back of it all wet. So I'm using a gloss clear acrylic, which you can buy right there in your hobby shop. I'm just painting it on. It will dry clear, so don't worry about it. It'll look a little milky white when you're putting it on. But once it dries, it will dry clear, and it'll make the back side of this thing look wet and reptilian and slimy, and that's really what I'm going for. And you might want to even dodge it a little bit on the rock here and there, just like, some of the wetness of the creature itself the moisture's gotten onto those rocks. So now you can see that it's all dried here. So now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to just look it over, make sure I didn't miss anything. But I am very happy with this model from the Pathfinder Battles WizKids Deepcuts, and now I think I'm just going to go ahead and let you enjoy the portfolio I have going on here.